Have you ever gotten acrylic paint on your clothing or forgotten to rinse your brush and given them up for ruined? Join me in the studio for some gel plate texture fun, and I will show you how I saved some of my daughter's favorite clothing and my favorite brushes. It is Wednesday, and I am in the studio. I was also in the studio yesterday filming a fun experiment on a new camera. And well, that's not tonight's video. But I have this on my desk that I had left to dry. So you will get to see the pole. I'm using gloss medium. And I can play around with how I got this effect after I show you the other things on my desk. Because I have two paintbrushes that have been sadly abused. And I am going to introduce you to an amazing tool to have in your studio, Murphy's Oil Soap. Murphy Concentrated Wood Cleaner. First, I will apply heavy cardstock to my thoroughly dry layers of paint with my wet gloss medium. I do love my Speedball Red Baron, which I've mentioned before. It was one of those things. It was one of those things I didn't really think I would need, but really love. And while that dries, I will set this aside and introduce you to one of my best friends. Because I can be forgetful. And my daughter can be as messy as I am. And she doesn't always wear art clothes to make art. And I have saved a favorite sweatshirt. It does take some elbow grease, but it works great. So to demonstrate how well it works, I'm just going to rub some into the bristles. Well, not really into the bristles because there is no separation there. But get these coated. So yeah, I tend to also not be someone who wears gloves or doesn't get her hands dirty. So you wouldn't have to just use your fingers. And I will be using a shop towel, especially after it gets better applied. Oh, sorry. And I will just pour some in here. I know people do cut it with water, but I just use it straight. Wipe my fingers again. And squish these around in here. I suppose I could have applied my paper after, and that was my original plan, but I'm also forgetful. Hence the brushes. So this one is already showing some significant progress. This, I don't know what I was thinking. These, I mean, that is just completely solid. But this is one of my favorite brushes. But it's one of my favorite brushes for applying satin glazing liquid in my transparent tissue papers. So there's already been some significant progress with this one. So if I could take this to the sink right now and take you along, which I can't, hot water. The next useful step would be hot water. But to show how much we can accomplish, even just with the oil soap, that is already quite an improvement. My favorite brush, one of my favorite brushes, it's going to take some more time. So it may not be ready by the end of this video. So I will just leave it to soak longer. You can actually see, well, I can actually see how it's gone from this color and quite translucent. You can see the paint making it cloudier. You can see how it's getting blue with the blue paint in there. This is great stuff. And the other brush is quite a good tool, so that's interesting. So yes, hot water right now would be very convenient. Look at the difference here, where it's pulled out that blue paint. So this brush is well on its way to restoration. It still has some paint between the bristles, and you would not be able to paint like you could with this brush before I forgot to clean it, but it's almost there. I'll let that one sit and see how we're doing here. That's still pretty solid. But we're getting down to the bristles themselves. And now we'll set that aside. Especially with it being so damp today, and as usual, I got the gloss medium on a little thick, so this is not quite dry. There is no set time for how long a layer of paint takes to dry, but a helpful gauge is if the back of the paper still feels quite cool, it's not dry. So I'll set this aside again. And here are my 5x7s. That I should have wiped off. Let's roll this off. More solid surface. So as you can see, the edges here, as I've mentioned before, with leaving a brayer until the paint on it is thick enough to peel. This isn't quite yet, but the paint that came off on the edges of that illustrates how using a layer of gloss medium not only allows you to pull with some transparency, it also can soften up the paint layer on your brayer. So this was an experiment with some shelf liner. That's what created the texture. And I'll show you how I applied the paint to get these interesting spotty areas. First, a layer of texture. I was also experimenting for the first time with Prussian blue hue. If you've been around, you know that Liquitex Basics are my favorite for gel printing. You want a thin layer. And I will roll this off because although it could be interesting with the colors I add later, I don't want them to be muddied too much. To avoid them not showing through. So I'm going to try this, which is interior packaging from gluten-free crackers, actually. Go both ways with that to create sort of a crosshatch. And on this one, I'll get back out my, it's so loud here, scrap cardboard with my modeling paste. There we go. I'll get there. And this also needs to dry. While that dries, check in on the paintbrushes. Oh wow, that is so much better. And look at how the consistency of the soap has changed and the color. But yes, it hasn't made a huge difference in my favorite brush yet. But this one, aside from scraping some remains from the ends of the bristle, is just about back to normal. So yes, rinse with hot water, and that is just about good to go. This, however, is still going to take longer. So at this point, a scrub brush or something might be useful. I was just noticing the flower I was filming with last night. I'm wondering how well that center would work. And since I have spares that are in better shape, all right, I will go with the bristles, because going against the bristles is, as they're coming loose, it's not great for them. Again, progress is being made. And I'll put that back in. And back to the fun texture from yesterday. Waiting longer, probably, yeah. So, in instances like this, when it's so pulling up, waiting is good. But I also want to test adding a little more gloss medium to the area that I pulled apart and pressing it down firmly again. And setting it aside again. Back to the Prussian blue. And not quite dry. Now it has 2 fingertip marks in it. So one option you have here is letting it sit longer or using a cool hair dryer. And as I have some other things to take care of right now, I am going to shut down filming for now. So we'll no longer be in real time, but that's okay. You can see how effective the Murphy's Oil soap is, even before I rinse it out. But this one will take significantly longer. It is interesting how the paint has changed the consistency and color. And that will stay to soak, and I will be back. Okay, I am back. And if you've been around a while, you know that I like to make the most of things that aren't ideal. So I have some almost empty paints. This is cadmium yellow deep hue. And it makes kind of a mess. So then I used my small brayer and didn't spread it too much. I tried to keep the globby parts still. I'm sorry for that noise. Let me do that a little better. So that was a little thick. So this one would be different than it was. And let's take another look at this one. And set this one aside to dry. And yeah, I should turn that up. Okay, I also have a confession. When I got up last time, I accidentally kicked this corner loose. The corner that I had re-adhered. So, when I came back into the room and noticed it, I glued it down again. I'm not sure how that's going to work. While my yellow layer dries, we can also take a look at my paintbrush. Look at that. And there are even some globbier bits that have broken loose. There's a chunk of blue paint in there. So this one still has a way to go. But it's starting to bend a bit, so that's progress. And getting through the very thick layer still remaining on the exterior of the brush. And yep, getting some flex back. So it has been about an hour since I shut down before. Let's slide this. Scrape some of this off. And of course, dropped it. Usually my Wednesday videos have a voiceover, but there is no time for that tonight. All right, let that sit. Bring this back. Ooh. Even though it was loose, it did re-adhere the big piece that I had glued back down. So here I come back to something I had heard someone talking about, how they go around and release their edges. I believe they were using an implement to cut, because this is an example of what can happen when paint that has gone over the edge creates a string that pulls against the paint you have on your surface. So it's interesting. I'm not sure what happened here. I clearly didn't get my yellow and magenta thick enough there. So yes, it was cadmium yellow deep hue and quinacridone magenta. But that's interesting. This particular narrow brayer, I'm not thrilled with the way its edges leave more lines than usual, but it can create an interesting feature, but it's not ideal in general. So that's that. I'll take a closer look. It's interesting. But this yellow is a little too thick to have been able to dry. I think, however, I'm going to go ahead and add the magenta. So we should end up with some splotchy yellow and splotchy magenta and perhaps some orange. Oops. Well, this is going to be significantly less spotty, blotchy. It will still be interesting. I'm going to smooth some of that out with a wider brayer, which again will create more blending, but that's okay. We're playing and experimenting. So this will have to dry. As I've said, multi-layers need to dry between each layer, or as you just saw it with the yellow and the magenta, they will blend more. I think these are looking pretty interesting. That's really cool. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is slide these closer together so I can get them both on one sheet of paper. They're nice and dry. So gloss medium can dry inside the container, and as that has happened, I'll grab some other. This one has clogged its tip too because I forgot to put the top back on it. So what happened is some of the thick, gooey, dried part from the side has gotten up in the tip. Whoa, that's too much, but we'll deal with it. And unfortunately, as sometimes happens, oh, I think it's working its way out. Okay, I was afraid I was going to leave, and I might leave the swirls there because I let it sit too long. And as I pointed out with how it can help you remove paint from your brayer, the gloss medium can soften up some of your paint. So I am going to just gently put a piece of paper down to take off some of the excess. Let's see how it pulls up paint. It's not a good idea to let this sit too long and overwork it, but we'll see how it comes out. Unintended lessons in this video. All right, got this smoothed down well. And this brush, you can see it's turning more blue. It continues, the paint continues to dissolve, but this brush will not be done during the course of this evening. That's okay. I'd rather have it take a long time and just give up on my brush. More progress is being made. There's more play in the bristles. I don't want to do that too much. I don't want to damage them, but it is making progress. And I'll let it continue. I will also let this dry, but let's take a sneaky peek. That's still looking pretty good. That's some paint stuck on the corners of the underside. Did have some gloss medium go over, but I think they're going to come out pretty cool. Definitely want to let these sit long enough though. So again, I will be back again. All right, here we are for the end. If you have enjoyed tonight's video, give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't yet. Ooh, oops. As well as my Wednesday videos. Well, this one had some unfortunate losses, but for the most part looks pretty cool. As well as my Wednesday videos of what's going on in my studio and various tips and tricks. I have Sunday Better with Art videos, which are small art prompts that can be done in an art journal or on paper if you don't have one. Designed for people who would like to reclaim their creativity. Low pressure art projects that don't take a lot of time, because time is one of the things that stands in our way when we are needing to make art. So I think these are some pretty interesting results. If you do the gel plate thing, give them a try. If you don't have a gel plate and would like a less expensive alternative, I have videos on how you can also use a silicone mat. I should move this before I show this to you again. My paintbrush is not yet restored. That has changed significantly from the way it started in the bottle and is now blue. It will take more soaking, but it is softening up and more blue is being removed. So it will get there. It could take a few days, but that's okay. I'll have my brush back. I'll be back next week with some more from my studio and Sunday. I'm glad you found your way here and hope you enjoyed your time in my studio.